Ask the Podcast Coach for June 16th, 2018.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that fun-filled music that means it's Saturday. It's 10:30 Eastern time. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. And joining me right over there, don't be fooled by cheap imitations, the one, the only, Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Thanks, buddy. How's it going?
Happy Saturday morning to you, Dave, again. And always good to be back on Ask the Podcast Coach, and a special bingo edition this morning. We're going to want to talk about that. If you're not logged into the chat room and you're listening live, you should get in the chat room because we'll have a link for a game for you.
Yes, it's askthepodcastcoach.com/live if you want to come and chat. If you want to ask a question, it's super easy. Just go to askthepodcastcoach.com/join and you'll pop right into the video here. And if you don't want to show your video screen, that's fine. You don't have to, but you have a question. That way we can have a dialogue and actually answer your question. And people go, so like, this is like free podcast consulting? And the answer there is yes, it's absolutely like free podcast consulting. And so people always say, why do you do that? I go, because not everybody can afford podcast consulting. All you got to do is give up a little bit of sleep on Saturday morning. And we have a good time out here at askthepodcastcoach.com. And again, if you want to join in on the chat, askthepodcastcoach.com/live and askthepodcastcoach.com/join to ask your question. And so, yes, Jim, what the heck is bingo?
Well, on Thursday,
there was a farmer.
He had a dog. Yeah, he did. It was a good dog too. But in this case, so Emily joined us, and she's one of our listeners on Home Gadget Geeks. She put together this bingo card for us, Home Gadget Geeks bingo. And I said, man, we had so much fun with it on Thursday. The listeners keeping track of some of the things that we say and some of the things we do. Every show has kind of a regular cadence to it. And so if you're a longtime listener, we kind of say some of the same things and do some of the same stuff. So those are on a bingo card. Emily has dropped that link in the chat room. You want to click on it. It's random and different for everybody, which is great. And then as we say things, you can click off the boxes. In fact, we've already done, and it only counts for the new second show that we've started. We started a show number 1 earlier, and it was a disaster. And so we're on second show. So you can only count that in the second show. But there's things in there like dance to the music, right? So we've done the theme music. You can click that one off and follow us along on bingo. It's good fun, Dave. We had a great time with it. Thanks, Emily, for doing it. You know what it is? It's cool.
Yeah.
So, it is cool. Well, and you're wearing a podcasting t-shirt. So there's another, it's pretty easy, right? But, and we'll try not to, say all those things up front, but it is really fun. We had a good time having the audience kind of go through it. And even my boring tech guys that joined me on Thursday nights had a good time with it. So hopefully you will too. It's
kind of like betting on sports. Now you got some skin in the game. You're waiting for somebody to say something or whatever. But I went out to the Facebook groups this morning, and I think I was farting around Podcast Movement's Facebook group, and got this one from Angela. And great way to start off any kind of Facebook post when it starts off with, I've received a $500 gift for podcasting equipment. So here's $500. Go buy some stuff. I love that. But I already own monitoring headphones, dynamic mics, XLR cables, and stands. I currently use a Tascam DR40, but the preamps are not all that great. I'm wondering if it would be to my advantage to purchase a Zoom H6 along with a cloud lifter. Someone suggested that would provide the clearest audio, and this would put me over the $500 mark, but I could cover the balance. Does this sound like a good idea, or would you suggest another option? I want a portable setup that isn't complicated, and I'm not considering mixers because I think it would be too complicated. And I've heard mixed reviews about the quality of the Zoom H6 and want to make a sound investment. And there was a part of me that when I read this, because if you boil this down to what is she asking are the Zoom H6 preamps worth $500? And a part of me just kind of want to go, because
she does want portable, right?
She does want portable.
That's key. Okay.
Yeah. And I just go, is the difference, if there is a difference between the preamps of a Tascam DR40 and a Zoom H6, they're going to be so small that, to me, I kind of go, why are we focused on the 0.7 decibels of hiss that you can only hear in a quiet room if you've got the best? It's like, oh, really? This is what we're going to focus on now. Obviously, there are some differences there. If you're going to record up to 4 people at a time, hey, the H6 is perfect for that. So you're loaded for bear. The question is, are there any bears in your neighborhood? It's like, if you're only going to be recording one other person, and you got an H6, you got 2 channels sitting there doing nothing for a long time. Now, granted, with an H6, you're pretty much loaded for bear. You want to record 4 people? Done. You want to record 6 people? Buy the attachment. You're good to go. Want to mix in a line in from your iPad? Good to go. But the question is, do you need that? And it's kind of like, to me, before I smashed it into a deer, I had a Toyota Prius, and I loved it because I could get in, and it had built-in Bluetooth, and it had all sorts of fun stuff in it. And then when my insurance kind of didn't really pay for the car, I got an older car. Now I have, I think it's a 2011 Camry, and it didn't have Bluetooth. It did have an auxiliary in, things like that. And you kind of realize what you need and what you want. And there's a difference between a want and a need. I don't know. Jim, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, if you're a gearhead and you're going to do a lot of portable, or you're going to do a lot of on-site interviews, and you're going to use it maybe even locally in your setup, I'd say kind of go for it. I mean, an H6 is nice. It's nice to have. It's one of those kinds of things. It's nice to have that kind of equipment when you need it. It's probably an overkill for most, but for me, as an example, I do 99% of my podcasting in studios, or in my studio here, or my studio at work, or whatever. I don't move anything. I don't touch anything. Everything is the way I like it. There's that 1% though, where I'm interviewing at conferences maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Man, that H6 would be nice for that. Now I get away with AT2100s or ATR 2100s and a Alesis Multimix 4. I never even thought about boosting it up that much for those kinds of events. In fact, they actually may play into my favor to not have all that lift on those events, because you have a lot of crowd noise. And so the last thing you really want to do is boost your mics in a place where you're remote. So, man, an H6 is a nice piece of equipment. Like, there's a ton of things you can do with it. So it's just pricey, right? I mean, $350, right?
Something
like that. I think so.
Something like that.
So that's kind of, you got $500, $350 on an H6 is not bad. I wouldn't say that's too bad of there's cheaper things.
Yeah. See, I forgot about the portable thing, because I was going to say buy a DBX 286 and take your spouse out to dinner, but that's not portable.
No.
But to me, if you're worried about
it, could be. I mean, it's not that big, but it's not meant to be portable.
Because I think what they have is pretty decent, depending on the microphone. What I'm seeing, I haven't seen it a lot, but I'm seeing it more. And there's somebody out there that is saying this, and it's really bad advice. And that is, record your volume low and then boost it in post. I just got done doing a podcast rodeo show. It's coming out Friday. And I think it's Friday or Wednesday. Might be Wednesday. The Covert Nerd podcast. And this is Lee. I kind of know him. And what's weird is when he sends me, like, he sent me something for June's question for the School of Podcasting, which is, by the way, do you look at show notes? And if you do, what do you want in your show notes? So I need that by next week, the 23rd. If you want to chime in on that, be sure to mention your podcast. And Lee's audio was fine, but on his actual show, it was something where when he was talking, it didn't sound bad. But the minute he shut up, there was like this effect. Like, he'd be talking to me fine, and he's like, and that's why I did that. So he had some sort of noise floor that was then getting gated. And it was something where, again, I don't know the average listener would notice that. It was a little weird because it was pretty obvious. But to me, I'm like, hey, this isn't the end of the world, but it sounds like you've got a lot of hiss here that you're now taking out. And it's just better if you just bump that up. If you're around -6 to -12, you should be good. Because when you then go in and take a low signal and you you double its size, you're also doubling the hiss. And so that's where that to me is the problem. And I think if anybody records on a Tascam or a Zoom or even on your computer, as long as you got a decent, volume when you record, I don't think you really have to worry too much. Do you, is that basically how you roll, Jim?
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, no, I think so. There you go. There's a square for you, by the way. If you're thinking about gain versus volume, don't forget that gain is really the field that the mic is picking up around itself. So the more gain you turn up, kind of the more, I think of it a bubble. It's like a bubble around your microphone, and the more the gain, the more it's trying to pull in from a wider field. That's why when you turn gain up, you get the hiss, because it's desperately trying to get the sound wider and wider and wider in your setup. So you don't want your gain full. Like that's a bad situation. We have these ATR 2100s are gain hungry. And so you oftentimes, if you don't have a lifter on them, or you're not processing them in some way, or you don't have a preamp on them or whatever, you're gonna give them a lot of gain in that. Now, the good news is on a 2100, it's really good at handling that extra gain. It does not expand. Its field does not expand too wide. You can have a lot of things going on around you and you're not hearing them. But if you've got a Heil PR40 or the mic, an RE320 that is more sensitive.
You said the magic word.
Yeah, it's a box. So I got to find ways to work this stuff in. Although I think you said it before. If you turn it up on those, you're in a lot greater danger. And so we tell people, right, set that in the volume. You bring the volume to that infinity spot, or that it's it's the line where you want it, and then you adjust the gain till it sounds right. Then volume up and down is just you being loud or you being off.
Yeah.
And so those two work in tandem.
Steven in the chat room says, hands down, H6 is the best addition that I've added to my setup within the last few years. While I'm not using it now, if it wasn't for the Zoom L12, I still would be. It was clean, versatile, and best part, it could away from the software recorder problems. Why am I not reading that right? Which included dropouts, Windows crashing. Come on. When you reflect back on the good old days of Windows crashing.
Did your Windows crash?
No, mine doesn't.
Oh, okay.
But apparently Steven was.
I gotcha.
The EXH-6 allowed it to be even better. So I don't know anybody that's bought an H6 and I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't have bought that.
No, it is a good piece of equipment to have as part of your gear. If you've got an extra $500 and you're going to drop $350 on something, that's probably not a bad thing to drop it on.
I need to get mine out of the box. I have one right here because people kept asking me about it. And I'm like, I just felt impulsive.
How many boxes do you have over there? Because like you have that other Heil microphone that you keep every week. You keep that should be a bingo card.
I did review it last. I did realize something that I've got that. I got a Blue Yeti sitting here. I got an RO5 sitting. I've got an H1, and I can see right over there. I got an AT, an Audio-Technica 2020, a very dusty one, and a Zoom H5 sitting over there. So
that is hilarious.
Yeah, it was weird. I recorded last week's School of Podcasting's episode. It was either 3 or 4 times. And it was weird because I started it on Saturday. I just wanted to get it going and things like that. And I kept listening to it back going, this is not, I actually went down a tangent. Part of it is with all this Hall of Fame stuff. I've been reflecting back to the good old days. And I actually found a clip from my very first podcast where I said something. And so I brought that in and pointed out how bad the audio quality was and this and that. And it was like a bad Saturday Night Live skit where it was like 3 minutes to make one little itty bitty point. And I was like, wait. So it was one of those where I go back to The Secrets of Dynamic Communication. It's a book by Ken Davis. And it's always like, whatever segment you're doing, it should be able to be boiled down to one sentence. And so my sentence was, if you know what your why is, the hard work you do doesn't seem like work. And I was like, okay. So this whole point was me explaining back in the day how I was excited because, oh my gosh, all you have to do is load this software, download all the files, copy and paste them onto this portable recorder, and then you can pull it. And I was really excited and listening to that now where it's like, oh yeah, you just hit subscribe. It was so much harder back then, but I was like, it was like 4 minutes to make this much of a point. And so I just re-recorded it. Well, the original version of that also, of me going through this whole thing, didn't leave me any time to review the microphone. So after I whittled it down to really, what am I trying to say here? Then I actually did do the microphone review. And if you listen to the episode, I don't mention it at the beginning because I didn't re-record the beginning. So I need to re-record that. And what's really weird, it's not a bad microphone. It needs a pop filter really bad, as I found. And there's a switch on it that takes a lot of low end out.
What's the model on that?
It's it's a Heil PR40 from the Deco series. And it's got a 2-position roll off switch, one for voice, which means almost no roll off, and then for music, and then one for voice. And when you do that, it's like he said, looking at his EQ, it'd be like me doing this. I mean, it just takes all the low end, and it almost sounded like this. It's kind of like, wow, there's no low end at all on his voice. And for me, for whatever reason, I don't know if there was something in my mix or what, there was a bit of a buzz, like a grounding thing, to where I would, if I would touch it, you would hear the buzz stop. And I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I just got a bad mic or what, but anywho, I almost sound like a 1940s recorder.
I like that sound.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the game. It's a ballpark. It's going to be a thriller, I tell you. Here we go. All right. Yeah. So
why did they talk like that?
I don't know.
But that wasn't the way they talked. Like that, that was a radio thing. It
was like, hey, honey, I'm home. It's time for a burger. Let's go. All right. Let's get the kids. It's going to be a humdinger, I tell you. No, I don't know.
It was definitely, it was a voice thing.
It was a radio thing.
Yeah. I know, it was a radio thing.
I got to be loud and obnoxious to be on.
And that tone, and it was picked up a notch, and, and it was like, every was, hey, like you were doing. It's just, I like, why do they do that? But you know what? That's a really good imitation of it. You could, if you could like record some of those as some throwback segments.
Yeah. I've done that once somewhere in the school of podcasting. I did one where I like Googled like 1940s phrases, and it was like a real humdinger, and, she's a real sweet dame. And that's where you get into trouble. You start going, all right, let's go. Let's throw it to the broad. And I'm like, wait, no, you can't say that anymore.
No, you really can't.
Yeah.
So, the 30s and 40s. How great was that?
It's weird. It's like, that really wasn't that long ago. I forget what I was watching. It was something like in Alabama, like in 1978. It's like when you could, I forget what it was, but it was something like, wait a minute, they didn't do that until 1978 in Alabama. I was like, holy, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty scary when you start. There's I'm part of a Forgotten Omaha group here in Facebook, and there's about, I don't know, 78,000 people in this group, whatever. But one of the guys always posts like 50 years ago from the Omaha World Herald, or 100 years ago, and you're thinking, oh my God, that was just 100 years ago.
Yeah,
and it's pretty amazing when you think about what can be done in 100 years. And I kind of wonder, we're what, 15 years into modern podcasting, maybe? Do you think?
13, according to the clip we're gonna. If we want to count Apple as the birth of modern podcasting, because technically 2004, but there's a clip I'm actually going to play later from the Apple guys.
So that's how many years? 13, 15, 14, 15 years?
We'll say 14.
Okay.
15's easy math.
15's is easy. Like, so we're 15 years into this thing, and think about how far we've come from hand coding RSS feeds and all those back in the day.
Yeah.
To today, where, it's amazing today. Some that we complain about it, but it's still pretty amazing what we can do. We can literally reach anybody on the planet. I wonder what like 25 years could be, and then what 100 years can be. And so it to me, that's just amazing when you start looking back and you think, especially living here in the Midwest. Ohio and East has a little bit richer of a history, but here in Omaha, I think the city of Omaha wasn't incorporated until like 1858. That wasn't that long ago.
No,
when you start thinking about it, and you look at old pictures, and you're like, oh my God, how did they live that way?
John Travolta was on Jimmy Fallon, and they were talking about 40 years since the movie Grease. And I'm
Yeah,
like, that seems like, when I hear that, I'm like, wait, that can't be that long ago. Cause I was a teenager. I remember I watched that movie like 8 million times. I'm like, yeah, you were a teenager. You're 53.
Yeah,
40
we're
years,
old.
buddy.
We're old, by the way. We
Welcome
are
to that.
super old.
Yeah.
So
I did get a thing from Facebook. This was from Hunter Ferris. And I just think it's cool to name your kid Hunter. That's a cool name right there. And he said, previous record was 88 listens in one day. My podcast is about songwriting tools. So with permission, key phrase there, with permission, I posted in about 4 songwriting groups over the last 18 hours. And today I have 108 listens and counting. And he said, so if you were to put a moral to this story, what would it be? I'll let you go first.
oh, don't make me go first on this one. I don't know. I don't know on this one.
I would say if you tell them, they will come. You know what I mean? Because everybody's like, if you build it, they will come. And the key there is with permission. That's the key. Because I think if, and I'm starting to see more and more, even this morning when I was in like the podcast movement group, and then I was in Podcasters Hangout, people saying, hey, I just posted this episode. Tell me what you think about it. And I'm like, that's borderline spam. The whole thing isn't, all these groups are like, we're not really into self-promotion, because otherwise when you get, I mean, Podcasters Hangout has thousands of people in there. If we all posted our episodes, it would be just absolutely worthless. So I love the fact that he said with permission. And if you can work that into, like if somebody had a question about how do I sign up for whatever, BMI ASCAP, and you talked about it on your podcast, or, hey, I've got a tool that I actually do that for you. I talked about it in my podcast link. I don't consider that quite spammy because you're actually answering the question. And then if somebody wants more information, they can. Now that's always going to be dependent on who's ever managing the Facebook group or whatever.
And that stuff gets manipulated too. Even, somebody will jump in there. Hey, everybody, share your podcast. Because if somebody asks for it, then it's fine, right?
Yeah.
And so that those kinds of things happen.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I'm with you. They're like, hey, I'm going to say this in here. Be sure to put, Now, if it's Jared in the podcast movement group, well, he's one of the moderators. Okay. But yeah, I've seen that a lot. Hey, everybody, share your show. Or the other one I saw was, the thing that threw me about it was somebody said, is anybody looking for guests? And that was all they said. And so somebody said, well, what would you want to talk about? And it was like, that would, to me, but I guess that's the whole thing. They're probably doing that because they don't want to seem spammy. So they don't want to say, hey, is anybody looking for guests? I can talk about nutrition and health and blah, blah, blah. Well, now you're being kind of self-promoting. But if you just say, is anybody looking for guests? Now somebody else can say, well, they asked me what about my stuff. So it's just kind of like, I don't know, podcastguest.com. Go, I don't know, or go approach somebody, build a relationship with somebody to, we've talked about that, how to get on other shows and things like that. But
yeah, I think just don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Like just do the right thing.
Yeah.
And don't try and game everything. And certainly, gaming and doing some of those things, I mean, you can get real big numbers doing it. I don't think any of that stuff is sustainable. People do not like being fooled, right? I mean, they just don't. And when they find out they have been, hoodwinked, there's another 40s term for you. Gonna get hoodwinked. When they feel like they've been, taken advantage of, I think it's 2 or 3 times harder to ever get them back for anything. They're just never going to trust you.
Yeah. I am not, I've
do
said
it right
before.
the first time, right?
Yeah. I've said this before. If you want to get on my bad side, just lie to me. That's a tough pill for me.
Most people don't like being lied to. No. It's just the way it is. But you've got to figure out, like, okay, what's the right thing to do in this situation, and how can I expect my actions to deliver on what I'm doing? It is marketing. And, we've been doing a bunch of marketing at Gallup, and we had one video, I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. We've had one video that's just done extremely well. And we started looking at the video and we're like, what is it about this thing? We can't figure it out. It just does.
Right.
It outperforms everything else we do by 10 times. And we're like, what is it? And when we didn't create that video 2 years ago to be used in the way we're using it now, it wasn't made with that intention. It just worked. And so I think sometimes you find those things that they just work. and then you got to go with it. Then you got to roll with it. So I don't know. I don't know if we spend so much time trying to either game the system or figure out the system. Just do your craft, be a nice person, and help people. And I think
that's it.
Yeah.
My sister used to have a friend, and he had some sort of brain injury at one point. He had a tumor taken out, but for the most part was pretty much normal. I mean, he was really lucky, but because he'd had this surgery, he was on some sort of not social security, but some sort of support. And I was always and he would look so hard to find a job where he could work under the table. And I was always kind of like, if you just use your powers for good, because I mean, he really went out of his way to just work the system. And I'm like, if you actually took this and put it towards a job, you'd probably be a manager of something, because it was all, if I do this and that, and if I got to work here. And I was like, if only you used your powers for good.
No, right on. Right on. Yeah.
Stephen wants to know, but how am I going to get the magic formula to podcasting fame? I think for myself instead of repeatedly asking the podcast community about it. Yeah.
If I think for myself. Yeah. In other words, what he's saying, right, is that, hey, think for yourself on some of these things. But that being said too, I mean, this is why we have the podcast communities, but they always run a similar, you've heard of the Gartner hype cycle, right? When we talk about technology and it spikes but there's no value in it. And then it dips, and as people get disillusioned with it, and then it comes back. I think in groups have a similar kind of, value in it, but it's great early on because there's just a handful of really knowledgeable people, and then other people join in and it's good for a while. And then you reach a critical mass where you have a lot of people and a lot of conversation, but that conversation starts to trail off and the value isn't there. And then the original founders of it are like, oh, I'm out. Like I stopped, and I'll be honest, I stopped looking at the podcasting groups on Facebook because it's just kind of the same thing, right? It's the same question. Now, that being said, those are real people who have real questions,
right?
Why should they be any different than when we were asking some of those questions? There were, years ago, Mike Phillips, used to school us all on microphones. Nobody knew that stuff. Mike knew it. Mike got sick of talking to us about it. So Mike went and did something different. Because he was sick of talking about ATR 2100s.
Yeah.
So, those groups run their course, don't you think?
Yeah. And Emily makes a great point. There is a search feature, and I actually started to post this because somebody had put in there, like, it was like Blueberry or Libsyn, which should I go through? And literally it was like 2 days ago that somebody had posted literally the exact same question. And it was like, if you just scroll down, like, I don't know, a couple 3 or 4 mouse rolls, you'll see it, and I think it might have even been Steve Stewart said this question was literally just asked, and so I was like, yeah, I think he said, this question gets asked 3 or 5 times a week. And I started to reply, I think it's more 3 or 5 times a day. And I started to put, there is a search button on the left, but I realized
it doesn't work.
It doesn't. No. I actually didn't post it because I was like, okay, now we're being snarky. And then the other thing I had to keep in mind, in this case, it was a female that was asking the question. I'm like, oh my God, I'm mansplaining. So I'm not sure I still understand exactly what that phrase is, but I was like, you know what? Go ask your question. That's fine. Whatever.
We dig on them by saying, hey, there's a search button or there's a search bar. But if you ask that question, if you put that into search, like what's the best podcast hosting, the group itself doesn't have a consensus on it.
No.
Right? And so the group will say Libsyn, Blueberry, right? They'll list, and somebody or groups of people will come in and put in hosts you've never even heard of before. Right. Well, now as that person, you're back to the same. In fact, you're more confused. Yeah, you're more confused. We think because we've formed an opinion on those things like podcast hosting. Dave, you work for Libsyn. You're going to say Libsyn, right? It's settled in your mind, but for other people, it's not. And search does not help them. So I do think this is still one of those places where, as the senior leaders, senior not in age, but in time or whatever, you can even be old, that we show a little compassion in that area and say, you know what, I know, but it still doesn't matter because they're going to ask what's the best host. And then we're going to say, well, okay, we've talked about this before, and here's the consensus. Other people are going to be like, I don't like any of those. I'm still going to do this. And so that's where those groups become ineffective. Like, that's where they don't work anymore. They get too big. There's too many opinions. You know, the fact, like on Star Trek, you know, the Borg, the collective conscious, there's no way that works because they would just be a confused mess all the time. If we had that consciousness, look at Facebook. I mean, we can't agree on anything. So
No.
I don't know. To me, I'm a little, those are frustrating. Those group things are really frustrating because,
you know, you made a really good point there. Is on one hand, you can tell people, well, you can go out to Facebook and ask questions, but in the end, you're not really, unless you're going to sit there and go, let's see, I had 7 people answer Libsyn, I had 6 answer Blueberry, and 2 said Podbean, and then somebody said Mudhoney. I've never heard of that. Okay, so I guess I'll go with Libsyn, or maybe I don't know.
And it just leaves them more confused.
Yeah,
it really does. It's where a consultant is helpful because a trusted consultant can help them kind of get down to that. Hey, this is what I recommend.
Right.
And
why?
And why? Yeah. It's really hard. Those groups are too big.
Steven's on fire. He's got all the questions. What media host should I use? Should I use SoundCloud? How many episodes should I have recorded before I start? How do I submit to Apple? What should I make my topic about? I love that.
You know, that one question, how do I submit to Apple? Like, that should be a binary question. There's a right answer and a wrong answer. That's not an opinion thing, right? And that's probably a perfect example of where, that should be in an FAQ somewhere that someone should just be able to find on Google. So why is that one? I mean, why do people consistently ask that one when that's just a set of instructions? There's no opinion on how you sign up for, how do you submit to the Apple Podcast? But yet people still ask. That might be a true situation where it's like, come on, use Google, let it be your friend. I don't know. I'm being salty.
Well, speaking of Apple, I thought I would play this clip. We mentioned this last week. And I'm just it's about 45 seconds long, but I love how where I cut it here.
These examples are just 3 of the more than 550,000 shows available today on Apple Podcasts. That's quite a bit more content to listen to than the original 3,000 programs we launched with back in 2005. We're continually refreshing and managing our directory, automatically retiring shows which become technically unavailable or those that run afoul of our directory content guidelines, such as those with spammy content or shows seeking to manipulate our top charts. Don't do that. Just please don't do that. At the same time as we're managing the directory, we're accepting thousands of new submissions per week. That way, our catalog is continually refreshed and our users around the world can always find something great to listen to.
So I love the fact. So now if somebody says, I'm thinking about asking what host I should use, I can just go,
don't do that. Just please don't do that.
What should I ask you about? And you know what? I should probably back up a second. We want to hear any question you have, but I now have a soundbite of.
Don't do that. Just please don't do that.
Well,
I'm thinking of using Anchor.
Don't do that. Just please don't do that.
We have, one of the beauties of a live audience and a consistent live audience is we have history. Mm-hmm. And so our listeners know what kind of what we've talked about and what's been done. Although we still talk about the same things kind of over and over and over. That's why the bingo card works so well.
Without it, bingo would be really hard. I don't know. What's the magic word that Dave's going to say today?
Yeah, well, there is when we think about. I think that's a square. When we think about, see, this idea, this bingo card, it really is. We all have our own, things that we repeat over and over and over again. I don't think it's a bad thing. Like people they like that. There's some Pavlovian, when we think about the bell rings and the dogs, starts salivating. There are certain things in our shows that it gives them consistency. It allows them comfort. If you were different every week, I'm not sure that's as good. Like your consistency in it, the value of old time radio, to go back to that, not the way they did it, but there's great consistency in radio. Traffic and weather on the 9s. People know what to expect and they don't want to be surprised. to be
Yeah.
fooled. And so I really do think there's some secrets in the work that we do, Dave. As I listen to school podcasting, I know what I'm going to get when I listen to it. And that's why I listen to it. If you were Binking the Wiz one week and then you were, it was all news and then it was, just an interview, these different styles, I may be like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to get. And if I'm going to make a choice to listen to that or something that I know I'm going to get, I'm probably going to choose the thing I'm most comfortable with. So I do think there is great value in being consistent.
Yep. Even if it's consistently changing in a way.
Yeah. Well, no, right on. That doesn't mean we can't change it all. And so speaking of not changing, our awesome supporters never change.
Yes. See, that's not what I want to share. I'm trying to do what you're talking about last week.
You're sharing it. I'm seeing it.
Do you see the sidebar or do you just see?
No, I see. You just go and you need to go into presentation mode or just go down.
I'm in this. See, I need to do this.
I think it's on the other screen.
Yeah, I need to, because we were trying this last week and it's weird because I need to, I know what I need to do is, because remember I shared the application, but I need to tell it to, this is the one thing why I didn't want to do this, because I didn't want it to be a giant train wreck. Because I need to switch screens.
Well, you could do it the way you had it before, which is just put it up and then just click down. I don't think anybody cares. We could see the.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, we could see that. It's good enough.
Presented. See, that's going to bug me now because I want to. There is a way. If I just do this, and then if I. Okay.
Riveting audio.
It is riveting audio. Okay, so we want to thank our awesome supporters. If you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome, this includes awesome people like Josh Liston from On the Bubble podcast, our good friends Greg at Det Shepherd, Jonathan Bloom at weeklyawesome.com, the immortal Glenn the Geek Hebert at horseradionetwork.com, Josh Rivers at podcastingexperiments.com, Max Trescott up in aviationnewstalk.com. And I did find out where Shane got the awesome coaster made. You want to take a guess? I never would have guessed this.
Vistaprint.
Wow, you're really tell him what he's won. You guessed right.
Did I get it right? Only because I had some stickers printed at Vistaprint this week and I saw it there. So
okay. I was gonna say because as he said, I'm thinking Cafe Press or Teespring or somebody. No, Vistaprint. I'm like, wow, that's I never would have guessed that. So, but yes, thank you very much. If you'd like to be an awesome supporter, go out to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome and you can get your name right here. Here's a fun question. Heather Vickery, and I think this was in Podcasters Hangout. I'd like to do a listener survey. Anyone have any tips or advice? Also, what type of drawing should I do for one lucky listener to incentivize people to participate?
So in drawings, like the big caveat, if you're going to give stuff away, realize you have an international audience, no matter where you live.
That's a good point.
Like if you're in Australia, you got American listeners. If you're in America, you got UK listeners. And shipping that stuff is a nightmare. Like that's the next thing that needs to be fixed. Why is it so freaking hard to ship things to other countries? That just shouldn't be a thing anymore. Like it's as far from New York to LA as it is from New York to London. Same distance, right? It's far. I get that. But why is it? Why can't I get a package to London for less than $35? It's just that freaking drives me crazy. But anyways, so just realize if you're going to do some giveaways, you're going to probably have an international winner and it's going to cost you a bunch to ship it if you're going to do it that way. If it's digital, that's completely different, right? That'd be a lot easier. So I think today, if you're giving things away, try to make it digital because you're always going to say, if you're, shipping. So a little bit, that's a big mistake a lot of podcasters fall into. It was really popular in the tech space, 5 years ago to try and get gadgets to give away, and it's a nightmare. So as you're doing that, just think about it.
Yeah, I've used Amazon gift cards. 1 year I gave away a membership at the School of Podcasting, so things like that. The other thing, when you're making a survey, if you're going to do something like rate my audio quality on a scale from 1 to 5, don't do that. Make it on a scale from 1 to 4, 1 to 6, make it even. The reason for that is if you have a thing like, here, I'd like you to rate my content. I'd like you to rate my audio quality. I'd like to rate my whatever artwork. If you make them odd, it's really easy. If you think about 1 through 5, I can just go and circle all the 3s and I'm right down the middle. So I don't really know. I know they're not really crazy about it, but if it's even and now it's 1 through 4, I either got to pick 3 or 2. So am I a little less impressed or a little more impressed? So use even numbers if you're doing that kind of thing. And then I don't know, in terms of the average PodTrack survey is age, sex, income, children. I don't think what else, but then you might want to ask them like, if you do different topics, so for me, maybe it's like podcast monetization, growing your audience, gear, which of these do you tune in for the most? Find out what's working, grab an extra set of skin and ask them, what do you wish I would quit doing in the podcast? Because somebody will tell you. Most people will be like, oh, you're fine. I love it. I love the show. But you have that one person goes, I really hate it when you do this.
Those who love it won't say anything. That's they just, they won't. It's just your negative people. Do you think, I think you need to start with the end in mind. Like, what are you going to do with this information that you get?
Yes.
Yes. Why am I asking? Like, do you really need a bunch of demographics questions? Like, do you need to know that your audience listener is your typical as a woman, 35 to 55 who lives in the eastern part of the United States? Maybe you do, but you should have an actionable item. Like, once I know that, then these are the things that I can do. Then those are the questions you should ask. Yeah. Listen, I work for a company that does surveys for a living. Do not make it more than 15 questions. Do not. 15 is all you get. They're not going to answer anymore, and your percentages are going to drop gigantically if you go over 15. And then don't make them gigantically open-ended. Like, what do you like? Nobody's going to fill that in. That just doesn't work. You got to lead them a little bit in that process. So if you're worried about your audio quality, then do a survey about audio quality. If you're worried about your content, give them some, like, did you like this or this? Did you like it when I do news or reviews? Give them some choices. Otherwise, if you leave it open-ended, you get even a worse response than you do if you give them some choices. People don't want to write stuff down. But
that's a great point. When I was out of college, I started off as a copier technician. Then for a while, they called me a customer service rep. And really, I was doing training on office equipment, but I was in charge of customer service. And they came up with the idea and they said, let's do a survey. And that was my first question. What are we doing with the results? Because the worst thing you can do is ask somebody, how can we improve? And they go, do this, 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 and that. And you go, okay, well, let's put that over here. And now let's do this. And you're like, no, what are we doing with the answers? That's a horrible thing. So then there he is.
Hey, Ross joined us. That's a bingo square, by the way.
Oh, that's how it works.
That's how. See, Ross, you just filled in a bingo square for a whole bunch of people. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Quick question on recording. Now that I'm doing longer form podcasting, right? Mm-hmm. Some of the material for my podcast will come from live stream interviews. And the audio that you get from Facebook Live when you download is not very good.
Right.
I have an audio interface, an Audience ID 14, and I was wondering whether I should run from the line outs of that into like a Zoom recorder or something like that to record the audio, or if I'm just wondering whether that would be the best solution, or whether I should try and record on the computer I'm streaming on, which I'm worrying might, with CPU issues, do something. I don't know if that'll affect the stream or the recording or anything.
Yeah, I would go with the recording. Of course, just don't forget to press record. I'm a big fan of the audio recorder. And if you want it to where you can then split it later, now see, that's going to mess up your live. I was going to say pan it, but that's not going to work because that's going to make your audio for the Facebook thing kind of wonky. But yeah, that's what I do. I mean, anytime I'm on Zoom, Skype, anything, I've always got some sort of portable recorder going. just because it always sounds good. The's no compression,
Right.
but when you listen to the recording later, Facebook, YouTube isn't quite as bad. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, Ross, you said the audio is not as good as it could be. What's causing that? Is it the Facebook platform that's causing that, or what's causing that?
Yeah, there's no doubt it's the Facebook platform, because I record in Wirecast and Screenflow. Even just for recording audio, I use those programs. So that's just recording in my computer, and that sounds like it's such a different sound going from that to going from any audio that I take from Facebook, which is just severely degraded.
Well, it's compressed, right? It's heavily compressed for bandwidth purposes. I don't know if you're gonna, you can't polish a turd on that audio. If it's bad, doesn't matter what you're bringing it into, PC or H1 or H6 or whatever. All of those devices are good enough,
Right,
to accept whatever's coming in, even the highest quality of sound. All of those would handle really, really well. So that back end piece, I don't think it matters.
So it really doesn't matter whether I record on a computer or I record on a Zoom recorder or
As long as your
whatever.
computer's working right? You can't, and it can't, it needs to be working right. But yes, every computer, every modern computer would be just fine.
I mean, I have a 2015 MacBook Pro.
Oh yeah.
Do you think to record while I'm streaming would
totally.
be fine?
Absolutely. Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
could just like run Screenflow or something and capture the audio that way?
It's a Core i7, right? And you got 8 or 16 gig of RAM in that thing and an SSD.
I think I have 8. Yeah.
Okay. And an SSD, even if it's a spinner, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Oh yeah. Those can handle it. All those things can handle audio by itself. There is nothing made since 2003 that can't handle the highest quality of audio, because audio is not very big.
Right.
Right.
It's super small. It's video that's the problem. And so, if you're bringing in the audio and 4K video, all right, now we have a different. I mean, that the 4K video is about 150 times more data than the audio stream is by itself. So that's where you need to be worried.
So what I want to do is get the audio from my computer before it's streamed. Like if it's me and a guest in a platform and we're talking, whether it's Skype or Zoom, or more likely if I'm using something like Be Live, or I don't know if you would do it with something like Hangouts, get that audio before you're sending the stream to Facebook, right? Where you're getting it through.
Correct.
I'm getting it through what I'm sending into my computer from my mic, and what I'm getting the return from the guest, and then mix it there and record it either in the computer or record it in.
Correct.
So, like the interface comes with this like digital mixer thing that's sort of confusing, but not totally confusing.
Yeah.
But that doesn't affect what goes out to, say, Facebook, but you can mix the levels of you and your guest and all that stuff to either send it to your interface again and into like a recorder, or to record it in your computer.
Yeah, totally. And this is what Dave does, I think, on your end, is that, we could pull the audio right off of Hangouts. It's not the best quality. It's going to be Dave and me both heavily compressed. In Dave's case, I think, Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, he's recording that audio of him and then of me coming in, and we're not using the combined Hangout audio that's compressed on the backside. Right. So his voice is a lot better on the other end because he's recording it locally. Right. So yes, Ross, if you want to capture that in its best possible fidelity, right? And the best possible is before you send it to Facebook Live. If you can get in that stream and grab that audio, you have the best chance of having the best audio.
So get it out of my computer. Don't get it out of.
Yeah. As long as your computer is hearing the other person as well, right?
Right.
Right on. Record it off that, or come off the mixer, or come off whatever, right? There's a couple different ways you can do it, but get it before.
You think even if I'm live streaming, recording on something like Screenflow on my computer while I'm live wouldn't be a problem?
Okay, so it could be. So Screenflow takes a lot of resources, right? Yeah. So it kind of depends on your video card that you have in there at that point. So I
wouldn't even turn the video on.
Oh,
although it may still. I don't know if it would still record something. Like I could just record. Because I use it just to record audio sometimes.
Just do some testing with it. It's a local kind of thing. It'd be hard for me to say yay or nay. Dave too. We couldn't just say we don't know. There's a lot of local variables. So practice, right? Get in there, get it recorded, get it figured out, do some recording, figure out the best spot. Watch your resource monitor when you're doing it. You know, with these, like with Hangouts and Logitech C920s, the 920s max out the CPU. And so if I was doing some local recording here, no, not anymore because I fixed it, but if I was doing some local recording here, that might influence the recording because my CPU is running at 100%.
Right.
So you just got to you got to figure out your own stuff and say, where is it going wrong? Or if it's going right, I know why it's going right.
Wow. There's a lot to it. Huh?
Yeah, there is.
And you can always try, just to test and record it coming out of the computer, and then you can record it, out of the mixer or whatever you're using and see which one's better. But
let's say I'm able to work it all out recording in the computer. Do you think I would be happy to still have a Zoom H5 or something? Because I bought one, but I haven't even opened the box yet. Would you recommend that as something like to take to events if I want to do quick interviews and things?
Yeah.
Or, I just walk around, I can plug one or two XLR mics into it, reporter mics.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just, okay, let's get 5 minutes with this person or whatever. And okay.
Yeah, they're handy.
So it's a worthwhile investment, even if it isn't the solution for this.
It's not an investment. You made a purchase.
Yeah, that's right. And it starts decreasing as soon as I tear the wrapper off the box, right?
It's semantics, but it's just a tool. It's just a tool, right? And so it's a great purchase, Ross. You should, if you're going to do stuff like that remote, it's a great thing to have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you decide later that, hey, recording on the computer, is for whatever reason taxing it, which it doesn't sound like it, you pull out the H5 and go into the line in or whatever you want, and you're good to go. So
you have another option, or you could do 2 recordings that way, right? You could use that to have a backup in case one goes bad, because that never happens with hardware.
Yeah.
While we're on interfaces, I got to show you this because Mike Murphy recommended this.
Okay.
And it's this little Shure interface, and look at how small, you can see how small it is and light.
Okay.
But it's all metal. It's $129. And you can plug it in either to your computer or to a phone. And I can even plug the SM7B.
Is it USB?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's USB. And I can even plug this in and not need a cloud lifter or FedHead or anything.
Huh.
That's what it is, right? It's
unbelievably good.
Got a gain boost in it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but I wouldn't use it over my audience for a full show or something,
Right.
but I run the audio out of my audience, out of the line outs into here, and then go live on Instagram. So I can be live on Facebook and Instagram with the same mic. Right. I mean, I couldn't, but it's much better, I think, than the iRig Pre or whatever, which is fine, but you can't plug a line into it. Right. And, you can't really see where you're at on the gain and stuff like that. So this little, I don't know. It's amazing.
What's the model number on it? It's a Shure what?
It's MVI, I believe. It's part of their Motov line. Their line of
MVI.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is that you've probably seen on Instagram Live where somebody's a guest on a show and they set up a phone and you see their half of the interview,
right?
But you only hear their half. So when I do the setup, you would only see me. You'd kind of get you're looking in at me if I'm on Facebook Live or something, but you can hear the host interviewing me, or you could hear you can hear everybody because you get the whole return through my interface.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's an audio interface. It's actually a simplified audio interface. I'll throw a link in the chat room square so that you guys can get that. Cool.
But it's good. I mean, it's handy, right? I can throw it in a bag and take it with me to an event or whatever and go live on my phone with good audio or go live on my computer. Like I say, like you said, it's simplified. It's not, full-fledged, but it's a pretty cool product.
It is actually a price point. It's like those, Dave, help me, those portable,
Personas?
Yeah, no, it.
Griffin iMic?
No, the
iRig,
the pre.
Yeah, Sound Design's MixPre.
MixPre, right? MixPre is a really advanced version. It's an audio interface, right? This is just a simplified. This is kind of like an audio interface for the average guy.
Right.
These
Have you guys ever tried that MixPre? That thing.
Oh, I
looks
loved it.
amazing.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
That's
beautiful.
one that
They
if
are
I had to do this
expensive.
again, I'd have a MixPre here, and you could take the PreSonus and stick it up every place.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Up the chimney is what you meant to say, right?
Is it-
Up the
This
chimney.
thing still hasn't worked as a reliable. Like right now, I'm not using it as a USB interface. I'm going out of my USB mixer into a Griffin iMic because for whatever reason, we've seen it where I'll just be talking and all of a sudden, and Jim's going, Dave, we lost you. So
Yeah.
Wait, so that MixPre, because I was looking at those and I've never tried them or anything. I mean, I just looking on them in a magazine. Is that as portable as anything else?
oh, yeah.
Is that as
It's
portable
the
as like a
size of an
Zoom?
8-track tape.
It's meant to be portable. They're durable and rugged. They have nice cases on them and covers. You can put a battery in it if you want to. It can plug in, but it'll run off a battery as well. I mean, that's the real deal. The real deal though is they're $650.
Yeah,
Right.
That's the problem.
But they're like the preamps and converters and all that stuff is like as good as what you'd get in any
That's good.
other or
Yes,
better.
very good. Very good.
So that could be your one tool for everything then.
Yeah, it could. Ross, hang around for the
All right.
post show a little bit. We got some music coming up.
Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm like, oh, I'm playing them out now. That's not good. But yeah, stick around for some post show. We're here every Saturday, and we ran out of music. So
That's all
this is thanks so much to the chat room, to everybody. AskThePodcastCoach.com/live. We will see you next week. Now we'll be quiet for 5 seconds.